scapula. It originates at the posterior tubercles of the transverse processes of C1 up down to C4. It inserts at the superior part of the vertebral border of the scapula. This elevates the scapula and tilts its glenoid cavity inferiorly by rotating this scapula. So this is the serratus anterior. It originates at the external portion of the external surfaces of the lateral parts of the rib. Ribs 1 through 8, and in between 8 and 9. It inserts back here to the anterior vertebral border of the scapula. This muscle pulls the scapula forward and downward. So this is the trapezius muscle. It originates at the medial third of the superior nuchal line. It goes to the external occipital protuberance. It connects to the nuchal ligament and the spines of C7 and all of the thoracic vertebrae. It inserts at the lateral third of the clavicle, the acromion process, and the spine of the scapula. So this is the lateral third of the clavicle, the spine of the scapula, the acromion. And this entire muscle elevates, retracts, and rotates the scapula. The middle fibers retracts, the inferior fibers depress the scapula. The superior and inferior fibers work together in the superior rotation of the scapula. So this is the latissimus dorsi. It originates at the iliac crest. It goes to the spines of the sacral, the lumbar and lower thoracic vertebrae, and it includes the lower 4 ribs. It inserts at the intertrabecular groove right here on the humerus. This allows it to extend and adduct and rotate the humerus medially, and it also retracts the shoulder.
So this is flexors, and it origin is from medial epicondyle of humerus and goes through anterior proximal radius and ulna, and goes through interosseous membrane, and insertion is carpus and metacarpus and phalanges. Okay, this is extensors. Origin is lateral epicondyle of humerus and posterior surface of radius and ulna, and same as flexors, it goes through interosseous membrane. Insertion is carpus and metacarpus and phalanges. This is dorsal interossei. Origin is adjacent sides of 2 metacarpus bones. Insertion is extensor expansions and bases of proximal phalanges of digits 2 to 4. So these red lines are palmar interossei. Origin is palmar surface of metacarpus 2, 4, and 5. Insertion is extensor expansion of digits and bases of proximal phalanges of digits 2 and 2, 4, and 5. This is lumbrical muscles. Origin is tendons of flexor which sends tendon to the distal phalanx of digits 2 to 5. Insertion is lateral side of extensor expansion of digits 2 to 5.
Alright, I'm going to talk about the pectoralis minor muscle. So the first thing we're going to talk about is where it originates. It originates on the sternal ends of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rib right here. And the insertion is going to be on the coracoid process of the scapula. That's where the insertion is. And the action of the pectoralis minor muscle is it pulls the scapula forward and downward. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is the pectoralis major muscle. So the pectoralis major muscle is right here, and where it originates is there's two places where it originates: the clavicular head and the sternocostal head. So up here is where the first origination is, and this is the anterior surface of the sternocostal head, and then it will also originate down here, and this would be the anterior surface of the sternum and the superior costal cartilages, and right here is external abdominal oblique, and that's where it originates, is this whole thing right here. And the insertion of the pectoralis major is the crest of the greater tubercle of the humerus, which would be like right here, but you can't really see it. And that's the insertion. And the action of the pectoralis major muscle is it adducts and medially rotates the humerus muscle and draws the shoulder joint anteriorly and inferiorly. Okay. The next we're going to talk about is the rhomboidus major muscle. And the rhomboidus major muscle is right here on this model. And it originates on the spinous process of T2 through T5. The insertion of the rhomboidus major muscle is the vertebral border of the scapula. And so if we look over here, let's see the scapula. Vertebral border, I'm guessing to be right here. And let's see what else. The action. Okay, the action of the rhomboidus major muscle, it adducts the scapula and rotates it, depresses it. Oh my gosh. Okay, the action is it adducts scapula and rotates it to depress glenoid cavity. That was awful. Okay. Now the deltoid muscle. Just pause it for a minute. Okay, so next thing I'm going to talk about is the deltoid muscle. Your deltoid muscle is on your shoulder right here, and the origination is it originates on the clavicle, the acromion process, and the spine of the scapula right here, and that's the origination. And the insertion is the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. Okay, and then the action of the deltoid muscle is there's three actions of the deltoid muscle. There's the anterior part, and it flexes and medial rotates the arm. And then the middle part of the action is it abducts the arm, which means rising the arm up towards the head. And then the posterior part is it extends and laterally rotates the arm. And that is the action of the deltoid muscle.
So this is your bicep brachii.
So I'm going to show you the coracobrachialis, and that is right here on the inner portion of the arm. It originates at the coracoid process of the scapula, so right up in here. And its insertion is in the middle third surface of the humerus, so it comes down to about right here. And what it does is it flexes and abducts the arm at the shoulder joint, so it helps bring it up. The next is the teres major, and that one's down over here, and it's at the inferior angle of the vertebral border of the scapula is where it originates, and then it comes back over here to the crest of the lesser tubercle of the humerus, so it runs about like this. And what that does is it medially rotates and abducts the arm. And then the other four are the ones that make up the rotator cuff. And an acronym to remember that is SITS, starting with the supraspinatus, which is right up here. And that is in the fossa of the scapula, and it inserts at the greater tubercle of the humerus, and it abducts the arm laterally and rotates the humerus. the eye is the infraspinatus, which is right over here, and it inserts at the greater tubercle of the humerus, and its origin is at the infraspinatus fossa of the scapula, and it rotates the arm laterally. Then there's the teres minor, which runs right over here, and it originates at the superior part of the axillary border of the scapula, so right over here, and then its insertion is at the greater tubercle of the humerus again, and it also rotates it laterally. And the very last one is the subscapularis, which is underneath over here, and what it does is it helps to like rotate the arm medially and extend the humerus, but its origin is at the subscapular fossa, which is up in here, and then the lesser tubercle of the humerus right over here
Is its insertion.
is its insertion.
Yes, go like that.
So the origin of biceps brachii, short head, it's located on the coracoid process of scapula, long head, supraglenoid, tubercle of scapula, and insertion is the radial tuberosity and fascia of forearm, and it flexes and supinates your forearm. So this is your brachialis. Origin of the brachialis is the distal half of anterior shaft of the humerus, and the insertion is the coracoid process of the ulna, and it flexes your elbow. This is your brachioradialis. So the origin of the brachioradialis is proximal 2/3 of lateral supracondylar ridge of humerus, and the insertion is the lateral surface of distal end of the radius, and it flexes your elbow as well. And this is one of the exercises for your brachioradialis.
This is the triceps brachii. The triceps brachii has the origin in the infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula lateral and the posterior surface of humerus superior to the radial nerve growth, and the posterior surface of humerus inferior to radial nerve growth. The insertion of the triceps brachii is in the oligram process of the ulna. The action is to extend forearm long head, status head of abducted humerus. This is your pronator teres. The origin of the pronator teres is the medial condyle of the humerus and the coronary process of the ulna, and the insertion of the pronator teres is the medial lateral surfaces of the radius. The action of the pronator teres is pronate forearm. The supinator is located deep of the extensors. The origin of the supinator is the lateral condyle of the humerus and the crest of the ulna, and the insertion of the supinator is the lateral surface of proximal third of the radius. The action of the supinator is supinates forearm.
Exercise for the latissimus dorsi is lat pull downs, which you usually use a machine for, but it's where you grab the machine up here and then you pull down like this and it works your lats. The other exercise we're going to talk about is working your pectoralis major muscle, and it's a bench press. So you go on the bench and then you get the weight and then you push it up. Bench press, obviously.